All right, so today we're tackling a topic you guys have been buzzing about, and honestly, it's one I'm super curious about too. It's all about, well, how our brains, the whole neuroscience thing, connects to how we learn, especially in school.
Yeah, like the nuts and bolts of how we absorb knowledge.
Exactly. You sent over this paper by Richard Mayer, How Can Brain Research Inform Academic Learning and Instruction, which is from 2017.
Oh yeah, Mayer's work is always insightful.
And basically what you guys want to know is, can all this hype around brain science actually help us teach and learn better? I mean, it seems logical, right?
You'd think so, right? Understanding the brain should give us the keys to the learning kingdom.
But is it really that simple? That's what we're diving deep into today.
Peeling back the layers.
Mayer points out there's kind of been this historical disconnect between neuroscience, the lab coats and brain scans, and the everyday reality of classrooms and students.
It's not as straightforward as, oh, look, this part of the brain lights up when you learn the Pythagorean theorem, so let's just, poke it more.
Yeah, if only it were that easy. So where does educational psychology fit into all of this?
That's the bridge, the crucial link.
Yeah.
It takes what we're learning about the brain and tries to apply it to how people learn in real educational settings.
So not just about neurons firing, but how those neurons firing translate into, say, understanding fractions or writing an essay.
Precisely. The human learning experience is far too complex to simply draw a straight line from a brain scan to an effective teaching method.
And it's interesting, Mayer mentions that even William James, way back in the late 1800s, was cautious about applying psychology directly to teaching.
James was incredibly insightful. He understood that psychology wasn't some magic bullet for instant learning success.
He was basically saying, hold your horses, folks, it's more complicated than that.
He recognized the inherent complexities of classrooms, the incredible diversity of learners, and how abstract psychological theories rarely translate neatly into concrete teaching practices.
So enter E.L. Thorndike, often considered the first educational psychologist.
Thorndike, a true pioneer.
Mayer credits him with really trying to tie the physical brain to learning, even discussing the synapse back in 1926.
Way ahead of his time, really.
Yeah.
He dedicated a significant chunk of his work to exploring the biological underpinnings of learning.
Like trying to ground educational ideas in what we knew or thought we knew about the nervous system.
His focus on the synapse as a key player in learning was truly remarkable for that era. It really laid the groundwork for the field.
And it wasn't just a one-off thing. Mayer points out that throughout the 20th century, educational psychologists kept trying to build these connections.
Oh, absolutely. There was this growing sense that understanding learning fully required looking at it from multiple angles, including the biological level.
It's like they knew the brain held crucial pieces of the puzzle.
For sure. A complete understanding of learning and instruction needs insights from various levels of analysis, and the biological level is a critical one.
Then, bam, the 21st century hits, and suddenly we have fMRI and EEG.
Those are game changers.
Right. We can actually peek inside the brain in much more detail than ever before.
It's like going from blurry black and white images to high-definition, full-color pictures of brain activity.
And Mayer talks about this leading to a boom in educational neuroscience research with new journals, books, the whole shebang.
Oh yeah, neuroimaging tech really fueled the fire. It provided these incredible tools to study learning in ways we could only dream of before.
So, with all this new info, how does Mayer define educational psychology?
Well, he breaks it down into three core components.
Lay it on me.
First, there's a science of learning that delves into how we learn, the mechanisms at play.
Makes sense. Got to start with the basics. What's next?
Then you have the science of instruction, which focuses on, well, how to teach effectively, how to facilitate learning based on what we know about the science of learning.
So, putting those learning principles into practice. I like it.
And finally, there's the science of assessment. This is all about determining if learning has actually occurred.
Got to measure those outcomes, right? So it's kind of a full circle thing, Understanding how the brain learns, using that to inform how we teach, and then figuring out if our teaching is actually working based on what we see in the brain.
Exactly. The three components are completely intertwined. And what's really interesting is that Mayer emphasizes how educational psychology isn't just about general learning. It's specifically about academic learning.
So it's not just like, can a rat learn to press a lever for cheese?
Right. It's much more focused. It's about learning algebra, history, writing, and tackling those real-world problems you encounter in academic settings.
That makes it much more relevant to, well, everyone listening, I'd say.
Definitely. And this focus on subject areas and real-world tasks makes the research way more applicable to actual classrooms and students.
Another thing Mayer points out is that there are different kinds of research goals. Some research is purely about understanding the fundamentals, right?
Pure basic research, yeah. It's like exploring uncharted territory just for the sake of knowledge itself.
And then there's research that's all about solving specific problems.
Pure applied research.
Right.
That's driven by a very clear, practical purpose.
But Mayer says educational psychology is kind of in between, right?
It hits this sweet spot, yeah. It's about understanding the fundamentals of learning, but with the aim of using that knowledge to improve educational outcomes.
So it's not an either situation. It's both seeking knowledge and applying it.
Exactly. It's knowledge that's both fundamentally interesting and practically useful. It's about understanding how learning works at its core, but also using that understanding to help students learn better.
Which brings us to the big question, how do we actually bridge the gap between neuroscience and education? Mayer lays out a few different models.
It's not as straightforward as it might seem at first glance.
One idea is the separate one-way bridges, where neuroscience and psychology each try to directly inform education on their own.
Separate, but aiming for the same target.
Then there's the mediated one-way bridge, where neuroscience informs psychology, which then informs education.
So kind of a chain reaction, with psychology as the middleman.
Right, but the model Mayer seems most keen on is the combined two-way bridge.
That's where the real magic happens, in my view. It emphasizes that direct application of neuroscience to education can be overly simplistic and often misses the mark.
His.
Well, because while neuroscience sheds light on the brain's mechanics, it's psychology, especially educational psychology, that helps translate those insights into effective teaching strategies.
So it's about collaboration and understanding at multiple levels, not just jumping from brain scans to lesson plans.
Exactly. And the two-way part means education can also pose questions that drive research in neuroscience and psychology.
So it's not just a one-way street, it's a dynamic exchange.
Exactly. It's a loop of continuous improvement.
But here's the big question, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this. Is neuroscience just confirming what we already know about learning from observing behavior, or can it reveal totally new insights that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, sure, some brain research might just confirm what we've observed through behavioral studies, but the ability to actually see the brain in action offers this deeper level of understanding.
Like we're not just guessing anymore, we're witnessing the learning process in real time.
Exactly. Think about the work on decoding numerical values from brain activity. It allows us to tap into the actual representations in a student's mind. We're literally seeing what they're thinking.
Wow, that is mind-blowing. And you're saying that kind of insight is impossible to get just from watching someone solve a math problem.
Exactly. And imagine the possibilities. This kind of research could revolutionize how we identify learning difficulties or tailor instruction to individual needs.
It's like personalized learning on a whole new level. But Mayer also mentions some folks who aren't totally sold on this direct bridge idea. He brings up Brewer, who was quite skeptical back in '97 and still urged caution in 2014.
Brewer raised some really important points. He understood that the brain is incredibly complex, as is the learning environment.
So it's not as simple as connecting the dots between neural circuits and teaching strategies.
Right. He argued that often we need those intermediate levels of analysis that cognitive psychology provides to bridge the gap.
So it's not about dismissing neuroscience, it's about recognizing its limitations and integrating it thoughtfully.
Precisely. Brewer wasn't anti-neuroscience. He was pro-realistic expectations. He advocated for this collaborative, multidisciplinary approach where each field informs and enriches the others.
Makes sense. And then there's Bowers, who Mayer also cites.
Bowers makes a strong case for being cautious.
Yeah, he basically says, show me the evidence. Where are the concrete examples of neuroscience actually leading to better teaching?
He's right to demand evidence. We can't let enthusiasm outpace scientific rigor.
He also worries about misinterpretations of brain research being harmful, like that whole left brain, right brain myth that Holmes wrote about.
That's a perfect example of how a complex scientific concept can be distorted and end up hindering, not helping, education.
It's a reminder to be critical, to not oversimplify things, and to really understand the research before trying to apply it in the classroom.
Absolutely. We have to be careful not to turn complex brain research into catchy but misleading sound bites.
Okay, so despite these challenges and differing viewpoints, Mayer seems optimistic about what educational neuroscience can offer. He outlines 4 key areas where it could really make a difference. The first is examining those cognitive processes happening while we learn.
Peeking under the hood, so to speak.
He points out that traditional tests only show us the end result, not the thought processes that got us there.
They show us the what, but not the how.
Exactly. Neuroscience, however, offers more direct measures of what's actually going on in the brain as we learn.
We're talking real-time data on cognitive processes as they unfold. It's like having a window into the mind.
And what kind of things is Mayer looking for in that window?
Well, he asks some really interesting questions. For example, do learners show different brain activity when they're learning meaningfully versus just rote memorizing? How does cognitive load impact brain engagement? And are there distinct brain activity patterns for successful versus unsuccessful learners?
So he's basically trying to connect those big ideas in educational psychology, like meaningful learning and cognitive load, to specific brain activity patterns.
Precisely. If we can find reliable neural correlates for these concepts, you would be huge.
Neural correlates.
Yeah, that just means specific patterns of brain activity that consistently occur when a particular mental process is happening. So, for example, if we could reliably pinpoint the brain activity associated with deep comprehension, we could design instruction to specifically promote that kind of brain activity.
That's incredible. Imagine being able to tailor teaching methods to literally light up the right parts of the brain.
And it's not just theoretical. Mayer highlights a study on reading difficulties where fMRI showed differences in brain activity between successful and struggling readers.
So they could actually see the difference in the brain.
Yeah, and what's even more interesting is that after phonological training, the brain activity of the struggling readers started to look more like that of the successful readers.
So the training changed their brains. That's amazing.
It highlights the incredible plasticity of the brain and how interventions can literally rewire neural pathways.
It's like visual proof that the right kind of teaching can make a real difference at the neurological level.
Exactly. It gives us a much more complete picture of how learning happens, not just behaviorally, but also biologically.
Okay, so that's examining cognitive processes. What's the second area where Mayer sees potential for educational neuroscience?
The second area is examining learning outcomes. This is all about how we measure what's been learned.
Assessment, right?
Yep. And as you know, traditional assessments have their limitations. Tests can tell us what someone knows, but they don't always reveal the quality of that knowledge.
Like, did they really understand it or did they just memorize it for the test?
Exactly. That's where neuroscience could be a game changer. Imagine being able to use brain activity to distinguish between rote memorization and true conceptual understanding.
So again, it's about going beyond just observing behavior.
Right. We can move from inferring learning based on test scores to actually seeing evidence of learning in the brain itself. This could lead to more nuanced and informative assessments that truly reflect the depth and quality of a student's learning.
And what kind of research questions does Mayer have about learning outcomes?
He's curious about things like, do learners show different brain activity when they have to recall facts versus when they're solving problems that require applying knowledge? Do their brains light up differently when they get answers right versus wrong?
So it's about seeing how the brain handles different types of learning and thinking tasks.
Exactly. And he also wonders how brain activity during tests changes after instruction compared to before. It's all about using the brain as a more direct measure of learning's impact.
It's like instead of just seeing the fruits of learning, we can actually see the roots growing in the brain itself.
Love that analogy.
Yeah.
And he gives this great example of a study where people learned complex multiplication problems. fMRI showed that as they got better, their brains shifted from using areas associated with strategic thinking to areas linked to memory retrieval.
So in the beginning, their brains were working hard figuring it out, but then as they mastered it, it became more automatic, more like just remembering the answer.
Precisely. It's like their brains were demonstrating the transition from effortful processing to fluent retrieval. This has implications for how we design practice and ensure that learning becomes flexible and transferable, not just rote memorization.
Okay, onto the third area. Mayer calls this examining moderators.
This is about understanding individual differences in learning. Why does the same teaching method work for some students but not for others?
Ah, the age-old question.
Right. And Mayer points out that research on attribute treatment interactions, or ATIs, has had mixed results. This is the idea that certain characteristics of a learner, like their prior knowledge, might interact with a particular teaching method.
So some methods might be more effective for students with high prior knowledge, while others might be better for those with low prior knowledge.
Exactly. And Mayer suggests that neuroscience could help us pinpoint which individual differences truly matter and why.
So brain imaging could reveal how different brains respond to different teaching methods.
Precisely. It could help us see why some brains thrive under certain conditions while others struggle.
What kind of research is Mayer suggesting in this area?
Well, he proposes looking at brain activity differences during learning and testing based on things like prior knowledge, working memory capacity, and overall achievement level.
Working memory. Remind me what that is again.
It's the system in our brain that holds and manipulates information we need for complex tasks. It's basically our mental workspace.
Ah, got it. So if someone has low working memory capacity, they might have a harder time juggling all the information needed to learn a new concept.
Exactly. And Mayer emphasizes that it's not enough just to see brain activity differences. We have to interpret them. We need to figure out how those differences relate to the different ways learners process information.
It's like we're trying to crack the code of how individual brains learn best.
Exactly. And he gives an example of a study on dyscalculia, a learning disability that affects math skills.
What did they find?
They found differences in brain activity related to how children with dyscalculia represent numbers in their brains.
So their brains were literally processing numbers differently.
It seems that way. And this kind of research is crucial for understanding the neurological underpinnings of learning disabilities and developing more targeted interventions.
It's like we're starting to see the biological basis of why some students struggle with certain subjects.
It's a really exciting area of research with huge potential for helping those learners who need extra support.
Okay. And Mayer's fourth and final area of interest is examining mediators.
Ah, yes, the non-cognitive factors that can influence learning. Things like motivation, metacognition, and emotions.
So, not just about how smart you are, but also about how you feel and how you think about your own thinking.
Exactly. And Mayer suggests that neuroscience could offer unique ways to measure these processes as they happen during learning and testing.
So, maybe we could see the difference in brain activity between a student who's super motivated and one who's checked out.
Potentially, yes. Or we might be able to see how the brain responds to different kinds of feedback, like praise versus criticism.
That would be fascinating. So, what are some research questions in this area?
Mayer asks, do learners with different levels of motivation, different metacognitive strategies, and different emotional states show distinct brain activity patterns?
So, can we see the impact of those things on the brain as it's learning?
That's the hope. And the challenge, of course, is being able to accurately link specific brain activity patterns to these complex internal states. It's not always a one-to-one relationship.
I bet. And what about examples of this kind of research? Does Mayer mention any?
Yeah, he talks about a study that looked at brain activity after students received corrective feedback.
What did they find?
Well, they found that students who had less productive motivational beliefs, like thinking their abilities were fixed, showed less sustained memory-related brain activity after getting feedback.
So their mindset was actually affecting how their brains processed the information they needed to learn from their mistakes.
That's what the research suggests. It highlights how intertwined our cognitive and emotional processes are, and how our beliefs about ourselves can literally shape how our brains learn.
That's pretty powerful stuff. It really shows why understanding these non-cognitive factors is so crucial for effective teaching.
Absolutely. It's not just about delivering information. It's about creating a learning environment that fosters the right kind of mindset and emotional state for optimal learning to occur.
Okay, so let's wrap this up for our listeners. It seems like Mayer's main takeaway is that educational psychology is absolutely key as the bridge between neuroscience and education.
Couldn't agree more. Educational psychology is the translator, the interpreter that helps us make sense of brain research and figure out what it really means for teaching and learning.
And he's not advocating for just directly applying brain science to the classroom, right?
No, he emphasizes that a much more nuanced, integrated approach is needed. It's about neuroscience informing our understanding of learning, and then educational psychology figuring out how to turn that understanding into better teaching practices. It's a two-way street, a continuous cycle of research informing practice and practice driving new research.
And you're on board with that approach.
Absolutely. The history of education is full of examples where oversimplified applications of scientific findings have fallen short. A more collaborative and iterative approach, one that acknowledges the complexities of both the brain and the learning environment, is essential for real progress.
Mayer doesn't shy away from the challenges, though, does he?
No, he's very realistic about the hurdles that still need to be overcome. He points out the technical difficulties of collecting and analyzing brain data.
Like, fMRI machines aren't exactly standard classroom equipment.
Right. And there are also conceptual challenges. Just because we see a certain part of the brain light up doesn't mean we know exactly what that means in terms of learning.
It's like trying to decipher a secret code.
And there are ecological challenges too. How do we study learning in a way that reflects the messiness and complexity of real classrooms?
Labs are controlled, classrooms are, well, not so much.
Exactly. And then there's the risk of getting too caught up in the cool new technology and losing sight of the fundamental research questions about how people learn.
It's easy to get blinded by shiny new tools, but ultimately it's all about using those tools to answer the right questions.
Couldn't agree more.
But even with all those challenges, Mayer is hopeful about the future, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He envisions a future where neuroscience truly informs both the science of learning and the science of instruction.
So a future where our understanding of the brain leads to more effective teaching and ultimately better learning for everyone.
Exactly. And he emphasizes the need for multidisciplinary research teams to make this happen.
It's not just neuroscientists in their labs. It's neuroscientists, cognitive scientists, educational psychologists, and educators all working together.
It's the only way to truly bridge the gap between the lab and the classroom and to ensure that brain research translates into real-world improvements for learners.
And how will we know if educational neuroscience has truly succeeded?
Mayer says the ultimate measure of success is whether it provides us with insights and implications that go beyond what we already know from educational psychology. Does it lead to new discoveries? Does it lead to better instructional designs and more effective classroom teaching?
It's not just about knowledge for knowledge's sake. It's about knowledge that makes a difference.
Exactly. If educational neuroscience can truly improve how we teach and learn, then it will have earned its place in the world of education.
So for all of you listening out there thinking about all this, what are your thoughts? What specific areas of learning do you think are most ripe for breakthroughs through this kind of interdisciplinary approach? And what are the big questions researchers should be focusing on as they continue to build these bridges between the brain and the classroom? Let us know.